left my boyfriend because he was too shy, and now I want him back. My name is Flavia, and today I want to tell you how I ruined everything. There are things you don't realize you'll miss until they're gone. And I'm not talking about big memories or movie-like moments. I'm talking about the small, everyday things, the ones you don't know are important until they're no longer there. For me, it was Daniel's silence. His way of being there without saying a word, yet making me feel completely accompanied. The way he looked at me when I spoke, as if he was really listening to every word, not because he had to, but because he cared. I left him. Yes, I left him because he was shy, because he was quiet, because he was exactly the way he had always been since day one. And now there's not a single night that I don't hate myself a little for that. I don't know exactly when I started to think that his calmness was a flaw, that his silence meant absence, that his way of being was a weakness. I guess I got influenced. I guess I let myself be swept away by a wrong idea of what a relationship should be. And now here I am, writing this as a way of finding myself among the ruins of a relationship I destroyed on my own, because he never did anything wrong. Nothing. He was always the same, always there, always gave everything he had. I was the one who didn't know how to value him. I was the one who needed noise, movement, intensity, as if that guaranteed something, as if that were true love. Daniel was the kind of person who didn't cast a shadow because he didn't need to outshine others in order to shine himself. He was shy, yes. But not the kind of shy that turns awkward or hides behind a wall. He was the kind who felt comfortable flying under the radar, who didn't need to be at the center of anything to feel part of it. He didn't talk much, but when he did, every word mattered. He wasn't one for grand gestures, but he had a sensitivity that sometimes overwhelmed me. He knew me better than anyone else. He listened to me even when I wasn't saying a word. And all those things that melted me with tenderness at first, I later started to see as a problem, like there was something broken in me that couldn't handle so much calm. Today, I miss him. I even miss the things that used to frustrate me, the way he'd take a deep breath before speaking, the way he'd scratch the back of his neck when he didn't know what to say, his shy smile whenever I complimented him, his adorable awkwardness during gatherings with my friends. His love without drama, without neon signs, without exaggerated promises. A love that was simply there, like the winter sun, soft, constant, necessary. But he's not here anymore. And I have no idea how to fix something you broke with your own hands. I met Daniel at a talk on European cinema. I was there out of obligation, accompanying a friend who was studying art direction. He was sitting in a corner with a small notebook in his hand and glasses that gave him the look of a young, absent-minded professor. He caught my attention, not because he stood out, but for the exact opposite reason. He was the kind of guy who didn't try to be noticed, who didn't do anything to stand out, but still created something around him, a quiet kind of curiosity, like he moved to a different rhythm. I thought he was handsome, though at the time I couldn't really explain why. He wasn't the typical attractive guy I usually liked. He was something else, more subtle, more intimate. We crossed paths after the talk, outside, while waiting for the street noise to pass so we could speak. He said something about the film's director, and even though I barely heard him through the traffic and my distraction, his voice stuck with me. It was low but confident. Unhurried. I got the impression that he was someone who only spoke when he had something to say, and I liked that. It surprised even me that I liked it, because I was used to guys who were direct, who made bold jokes, who tried to impress you with 1,000 stories. Daniel didn't do any of that. He was just there. And he made me feel calm. From that point on, we started seeing each other in similar settings. I'd run into him at other talks, in quiet cafes, at used book fairs. I found out he was a freelance translator, worked from home, loved languages and history. And me, with my volcanic energy and constant need to be on the move, felt strangely drawn to his more serene world. It was like his calm grounded me. We became a couple naturally, without grand declarations, without anyone explicitly making the first move. One day, I just realized I was telling him everything, that I thought of him when something good or bad happened, that I wanted to share my time with him. And he, in his simple way, opened his world to me without forcing it. He had this beautiful library full of books annotated in tiny handwriting. He made me coffee using strange methods and took the time to teach me how to use them. He spoke about his translations as if they were treasures. And I, someone who always had her head filled with fast ideas, projects, and noise, began to discover the value of the pause. For months, everything worked. I talked, he listened. I was impulse, he was support. It was a strange balance that felt good, for a while, at least. Until the scale began to tip, and I didn't even realize it. Moving in with Daniel wasn't a formal or dramatic decision. There wasn't that moment of, let's live together. None of those conversations full of expectations or future plans. One day, a couple of my books were on his nightstand. Another day, some of my clothes were hanging in his closet. And before I could even say it out loud, I was already sleeping there every night. He didn't question it, and he didn't celebrate it either. He just made space for me with that natural ease of his that sometimes looked like resignation, but which I later understood was his unique way of loving. No pressure, no invasion, no imposition. A form of acceptance that, at the time, I mistook for passivity. And at first, it was lovely. I felt like I was living in a corner of the world made just for me. I had my own coffee mug that he'd set aside for me, a shelf just for my books, and the scent of his detergent, which slowly became mine too. The apartment was quiet, filled with light, full of that calm I had been needing after chasing so many goals, after dealing with so many loud people and chaotic energy. Living with Daniel gave me a breather, a pause, a place with no judgment where I could be messy, quiet, or sensitive, and it was fine. But then, I started noticing things, or rather, I started letting things bother me that had always been there. It wasn't that he changed. He was exactly the same guy I had met at that film talk, quiet, attentive, patient. The problem was that I started needing something else, something I couldn't even define. I started getting annoyed because he didn't react to my ideas with the same enthusiasm I had. Because after dinners with friends, he didn't feel the urge to analyze every little detail like I did. Because it was hard for him to look me in the eyes when we talked about feelings. And at first, I kept telling myself it was just his way of being. That not everyone shows things the same way. That I had chosen to be with him precisely because of that gentleness of his that calmed me down. But something inside me began to burn, like an impatience I didn't know how to put out. As if I needed him to respond with passion, with some fire, with a strong word. And he kept giving me the same warmth as always. I began to feel like I was talking to myself. Like my emotions were bouncing off of him, finding no echo. Of course, now I know that wasn't true, that he was listening, that he was observing, that he was absorbing everything in silence and processing it in his own time. But back then, I didn't know how to wait. I didn't want to. I started to feel like being with someone so shy, so slow, so gentle, was dimming me, as if his calmness was contagious, as if the silence in the house was becoming suffocating. And with that idea in my head, I began to pull away without really pulling away, to be there without being present, to desire things I couldn't even name, to fantasize about a different kind of relationship, one that was more intense, louder, more impulsive. As if that guaranteed something better. It started with small gestures, tiny ways I began to sabotage everything. I remember the first time I refused one of his coffees for no real reason. He had made it like always, with that almost ritualistic care he had, using his French press, serving it in that red mug that said, "Good morning," like a private joke between us. And I, without even knowing why, said no, that I didn't feel like it. I saw his brow furrow slightly, like something loosened inside him, but he didn't say a word. I walked out to the balcony and stared at the sky, as if that would give me some sort of answer. Then came other things. Stopping sleeping in each other's arms. Making up excuses not to have dinner together. Not telling him everything anymore, keeping little details of my day that I once would have shared without thinking. Making plans with other people without including him. Little stabs at the bond we had, justified to myself by saying I needed space or that we weren't connecting the same way anymore. But the truth was, I was starting to search outside for something I couldn't find inside myself. And because I didn't know how to explain it, I projected all my frustration onto him. One day, I saw him look at me with a sadness I had never seen before. He was sitting on the couch with one of his books open on his lap. I was on the phone with a friend, laughing loudly, exaggerating a story. When I hung up, he looked at me like he didn't recognize me. He didn't say anything, he just looked at me with that way of speaking through his eyes. And in that look was a mix of tiredness, tenderness, and resignation that hit me harder than I admitted. But I didn't do anything. I didn't go to him. I didn't hug him. I just locked myself in the bathroom and washed my face, as if that could wash away the discomfort I had planted myself. Around that time, I started going out more with my friends, coming home late, not letting him know, replying to his messages with one-word answers. He never complained. He just waited for me with a silent loyalty that, instead of making me feel guilty, made me angry. Because it was like his lack of reaction took the weight away from what I was doing, like his silence didn't give me the excuse I needed to get mad at him and justify what I was starting to do. Looking at other people. Fantasizing about others. Imagining myself with someone who wasn't him. And yet I kept coming home to his embrace, to that warm space he gave me, even though I already had one foot out the door. I never really knew the exact moment I started losing Daniel. But I remember with painful clarity the moment I realized I didn't love him the same way anymore. Or at least that's what I told myself, to avoid facing the guilt. It was like waking up in a house that no longer felt like yours, even though you still recognized every corner. You're there, but everything that once felt warm now feels hollow. The same smell. The same mug. The same person. Everything the same, but inside, you've changed. And then, one random night, with a dark sky and a cold wind slipping in through the window cracks, I felt I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't a revelation. It was a choking sensation, like something inside me was screaming that I had to leave, that I had to end it, that I couldn't keep pretending we were okay when we hadn't said anything meaningful in weeks. I remember he was reading, like he usually did, legs folded on the couch, the warm glow of the lamp lighting up his face. I walked over and sat in front of him. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't even look at him. I just took a deep breath, trying not to shake. And without much explanation, without a tragic story or a complicated excuse, I told him that I felt we weren't working anymore, that I needed to be alone, that it wasn't him, it was me. The most cliché, cowardly words I could find, but at that moment, they were the only ones I could say without falling apart. And he, with a calmness that shattered me, just nodded. He didn't ask for explanations. He didn't stop me. He didn't beg. He looked at me like he already knew this was going to happen, as if he had seen it coming long before I did. That silence, that quiet understanding, hurt more than any argument ever could. Because it left me with no justification. Because it didn't give me the role of the victim. Because it forced me to face what I really was, a coward running away from something I didn't know how to hold on to. I packed a few things without thinking too much, some clothes, my toothbrush, a couple of books. I didn't cry. Neither did he. I left with a knot in my chest, a mix of relief and pain I still can't quite describe. I walked the cold streets with my soul in pieces, telling myself I was doing the right thing, that I deserved something different, that this was a step forward. But deep down, a small voice was already telling me I had just made an irreversible mistake. The first days after I left his house were strangely quiet. Silence. No messages, no calls. I didn't write either. I told myself it was for the best, that it had to be a clean break, that staying in touch would only make things harder. But the truth is, I think he didn't write because he didn't know what to say. And part of me was still hoping he would reach out, that he would ask me to come back, that he would tell me I was being impulsive. And because he didn't, I had to face the hardest kind of silence, the kind that comes from someone who lets you go even when they still love you. At first, I tried to fill that void with activity, going out, seeing friends, working, anything to keep me distracted. But every time I came home alone, I faced the echo, the void left by his voice, his presence, his way of occupying space. I missed his way of making coffee. I missed the clumsy way he arranged things in the fridge, his quiet laugh when something really amused him, his warmth in bed. But more than anything, I missed who I was when I was with him. The peace, the safety. Over time, I started going through our photos, listening to the songs we liked, rereading our messages, and something started to hurt more than before. Realizing that he was always there. That he had always been consistent. That he never gave me a reason to doubt his love. And yet, I left. I left chasing something that didn't even have a name, something that, now I see, was a void inside me, not him. Weeks went by, then a month. I found myself secretly checking his profile. He didn't post anything. Not a story, not a photo, nothing that would give me a clue about how he was. That drove me crazy, because part of me wanted him to be sad, broken, missing me. But another part was terrified that he had already moved on, that he no longer thought about me, that he was rebuilding his life without me, and that hurt more than I was willing to admit. I wrote to him several times. I'd start with a hi and then delete it. Sometimes I wrote long paragraphs I never sent. I told myself it was too soon, that I needed to give him space. But in reality, I needed that time too, to process what I had done, to accept that I left without giving him a chance to fix anything, without asking him if he also felt like something was broken. I simply assumed that my discomfort was enough of a reason to destroy what we had built. I started having dreams about him. Dreams where we got back together. Where he held me in silence. Where he told me everything was okay. I'd wake up with my chest tight, my skin searching for his warmth, but all I had was my pillow and that quiet void I had caused myself. And then one afternoon, while walking through a market in the neighborhood where we used to stroll, I saw him. Not up close. He was across the street, alone as always, with his backpack and a book under his arm. He was walking calmly, without hurry, without any visible sadness. And I wondered, did it really hurt him when I left? Did he cry? Did he still think about me? I hid behind a used clothing stand like a teenager. I felt ridiculous. Cowardly. He was so close, and I couldn't bring myself to approach him. And when I lost sight of him, I knew I couldn't go on like this. That I had to do something. That I couldn't stay stuck in regret without taking action. And that's when, for the first time since I left him, I thought about saying I was sorry. Not to make him come back. Not to fix everything. Just so he would know I valued him. That I had loved him. And that if I lost him forever, at least he would know I understood his worth. I didn't know where to start. I thought about texting him, about looking for him in one of the bookstores he used to go to, about sending a neutral message. In the end, I went with what felt the least intrusive, an email. There was something almost intimate about it. Something old-fashioned. Like the time between us deserved a more thoughtful form of communication. I sat in front of my computer, opened the inbox, and just stared at the blinking cursor. The first word I typed was Daniel. Just his name. It took me over 10 minutes to move past that word, because writing anything else meant opening a wound. When I finished writing, I didn't feel relief, I felt ashamed. Not because of what I wrote, but because I understood that I had written it too late. I talked to him about what we had, about my confusion, about how I had lost myself in a mistaken idea of what love was. I asked for forgiveness, not for leaving, but for doing it without letting him defend himself. For silencing him. For taking away the chance for him to fight for us. And I ended the email without asking for anything. No explanations. No replies. No second chance. I just wanted him to know I had valued him, that I missed him, that I hadn't stopped thinking about him. I sent it with my heart pounding in my throat. I couldn't sleep that night. It took him 3 days to reply. 3 days during which I compulsively checked my inbox every half hour, imagining every possible outcome. A cruel reply. An indifferent one. Or none at all. But when his name finally appeared in my inbox, I froze. I read the message more than once before I could process it. It was short, sober, impeccable. There was no resentment in his words, just a new kind of distance, one I hadn't known before. He thanked me for the message. He said he had thought about us a lot too, that he had gone through different phases, sadness, anger, resignation. That his life had changed. That he was doing better. That he felt at peace. And then, with no embellishments, with no double meaning, he told me he forgave me. Just like that. Straightforward. That he didn't hold a grudge. That he understood sometimes people need to step away to see things clearly. But that he no longer saw a path for us as a couple. That he had learned to live without me. That he sincerely wished me the best. But that he didn't want to go back. I didn't cry. I just sat there in front of the screen, feeling something strange. It wasn't exactly pain. It was like someone had ripped away a hope I already knew was dead, but that I kept watering anyway. I didn't get mad at him. I had no reason to. He had been generous. Clear. Even kind. But he didn't leave any doors open. He didn't give me any clues. No gray area to cling to. And maybe that's what hurt the most, that he did it right. That he didn't leave me a space to keep waiting. That he forgave me fully, but also without nostalgia. That day, I went out walking through the city with no destination. I watched people pass by and wondered how the rest of them managed to move on after losing someone like that. Not someone who betrayed you or hurt you. But someone who was good. Who was honest. Who loved you quietly, without noise. And whom you didn't know how to protect. I realized that regret doesn't always come with second chances. Sometimes, it's only useful for giving your pain a name. To learn how to live with it.